Hello again. Hi, Simon.
Hi, Vipan.
Carrying on with our chats, I thought we'd. I'm curious about addiction. It's something, you know, I know very little about it, and I know I've met you a couple of months now, and I know only an outline of your story, but it's something that I feel I need to understand a lot better, because I think so many of us, it's like a hidden subject in ways, that it's not a taboo subject by any means, but for those of us, including, you know, for example myself, who haven't been through that experience, I think it would be really helpful, and I'm very curious to learn a lot more about it, and it'd be great to hear more about your story, and even just and forgive me if I'm coming from it from a complete ignorance perspective, from an ignorant perspective, but I mean, what is an addiction, and how do you know that you're an addict, and when did it start for you, if I can ask those questions?
The earliest memories I have are not being able to stop. So it was like crisps, just crisps, and then it was another packet, and then another packet, and then it was, I think the next thing it was food. And then...
What age were you?
I have memories of being 5 or 6 and just eating like 5 or 6 packets of crisps until I couldn't eat any more.
But is that an addiction?
Well, the nature of addiction is like you go until there's oblivion, which is like you can't go any longer.
Okay.
And that's the nature of addiction. It's like you go until there's literally nowhere else. So you think about that in terms of like, you'll drink until you pass out, you'll use drugs until you can't use any more drugs, and it's like in the moment you would drink but it's also over the course of years you'll go until, and that's why the only thing that stops addiction is rock bottom.
Yeah.
And it's a rock bottom. Rock means there is nowhere else to go, and people have many rock bottoms. But my big addiction was alcohol, but it really wasn't. I mean, it's just alcohol was the thing that I managed to sort out that helped all the other addictions, but I discovered, you know, I come from a very traumatic childhood. Mum was a drug addict, initially addicted to pain medication, but then that became morphine, which is medical grade heroin.
Yeah.
See, people don't know morphine is heroin. It's medical grade heroin. I know, I've had that recently. Morphine is heroin. Heroin is morphine. It's the same drug.
Oh,
right, and people don't know that, right? And it shows where we're at educationally too. And I didn't know that, you know, I didn't know that until I was in rehab, and I got a really good education, just basic education, but I was never comfortable in my skin. You hear there's certain structures with all addicts you hear when you go to meetings, is I was never comfortable.
Yeah.
And when you're never comfortable existentially, you're always trying to find a way to change the way you feel.
Yeah.
Or you're always trying to escape the way you feel or who you are. And for me it was food, and then I just, you know, I discovered masturbation when I was like 8.
Okay.
Right, and then it was that, but I grew up in a violent home. I was emotionally and physically abused. I wasn't sexually abused, but I found I needed to escape, and I was locked in my room a lot. So, you know, I internalized the whole thing, and then I found alcohol when I was 11. And the first time I drank alcohol, I drank until I passed out and I threw up. But then alcohol also, it's what it gives you. It gave me bravery, it gave me confidence, it enabled me to get away from the very horrible situation I was in, and a lot of addictions start that way. For young childhood trauma and addiction sort of go hand in hand, not always, but 90% of childhood trauma leads to addiction, and it's a disease for which, you know, I've learned that there's a disease for which there is no cure. I don't drink today, but I allow myself to drink as much coffee as I like, and sometimes I won't. I'll drink coffee all day. Sometimes I won't. I can't, you know, my wife and I, addiction's become this sort of like quite playful thing really, but it's where we've been, it's not playful in that, you know, I can't keep peanut butter in the house. It's an infinite. We've got it under some control now, but it's because we both hit rock bottom. But it's I found pornography when I was 15, which the hardest habit I've ever had to kick is pornography. And the research is that 90% of men have some form of an addiction to pornography, which is highly destructive to the mind and the body. Our culture, my journey's taken me through cultures that are grounded in health and wisdom that's more than 100 years old. Yeah. And you don't go to Hinduism or Buddhism and you never ever hear an Ayurvedic doctor say that masturbation's healthy. Like, there's tantric exercises which are designed to bring your awareness into your body, so to be okay with it, but it's just a body, right? There is nothing grounded that says it's okay to orgasm and ejaculate, because actually it sends the nervous system into all sorts of places, the energy involved, there's a couple of teachers I like who go, in the energy, in a man's sperm, there's enough energy to populate a world, and we just waste this energy. And I didn't learn any of these things until much, much later. And so my addictions were, I started stealing when I was 9. I was addicted to that. I mean, I remember doing my social history with my counsellor in rehab, and she social history is when you go through it all. Okay. And she said, I've never seen a more vast range of addictions in terms of, like, it was everything. It was pornography, it was food, there was stealing, and at some point I've had a rock bottom in all of these things, where today I don't steal anymore, I don't watch pornography anymore, I don't steal anymore, I don't watch pornography anymore, I don't, I battle with food a fair bit. I still, because food's a hard one, you can't just give it up. I still have my battles with food. I don't drink alcohol. What else was there? Peanut butter's the big addiction. Wow, peanut butter. but I think the thing that people don't understand is, like, I think that everybody's addicted to a level, but there's layers to this thing. It's like, addiction is like a descent into the underworld. It's like there's the bottom sphere of hell. When
did you realise that having an addiction was causing you a problem? Was it early on, or do you go through a while before
the hardest thing about active addiction, so being addicted and being in it, is there's that time where you're blissfully unaware. Yeah. Maybe when you're like 20, but then you wake up pretty quickly to the fact that it doesn't make, even when you have a hangover. Yeah. Or you spend too much money on a night out, but it's got over and over and over and over and over. It's usually, well, for me, it was 15 years of realising I had a problem to realising that I needed help. Yeah. And then it was 6 years till I stopped it. So 20 years of knowing I had a problem. And that's the hardest thing about being an addict, Vipan, is you wake up, you know you got a problem, but the problem isn't just what you're doing. The problem is who you become. Because when you're in addiction, you literally embody the opposite of who you are. I would steal to get drink, I would lie to get drink, and this is why we treat addiction criminally. Because you could take the best person, and if they've been through addiction, they've had the best people I know would never, like me, I wouldn't do 90% of what I did in my addiction. No way, I'd rather die. But if I had a drink, like right now, if I had a drink, and this is the scary part of being in recovery, it'll come back. We hear stories of people who are 19, 20 years sober. A week after their relapse, they're right back where they were. There's a saying in addiction which is, every day of your recovery, your addiction is in the room next to you doing push-ups. Just waiting. Addiction used to be treated in the shamanic cultures as a demonic possession. It was treated as a demonic possession in shamanism, and even the word spirit. It was to allow the essence of who you are. So alcohol cleans. So alcohol in alchemy and in chemistry cleans, right? But it cleans the essence of another element. And so there was Al-Cool was the name of the demonic entity which literally removed your soul from you and took you over. And that's why when people drink, they lose their inhibitions, and it's almost like something takes over them. So alcohol is
Okay.
a very. Just going to have a bit of my coffee
well,
addiction.
You're going to do that, aren't you? I have some of my tea addiction.
And there's teachings that would say all of the addictions have their own sort of like spirit, demonic entity that is driving it. So it's driving the mind to have another drink, have another drug, because it wants to take over you and basically live its life through your body and in destruction and negativity and death.
That's
It's
really
a very
deep.
dark. It's a very,
very
deep,
deep, very dark. But I mean, the other thing that you've mentioned to me was that addiction can happen to anybody, regardless of social strata or
Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't
middle class, working class, upper class,
yeah.
whatever. It can affect everybody. Whatever job you've got,
Yeah.
and you can tell. Can
Yeah,
you
it doesn't
meet?
discriminate. It doesn't discriminate anybody.
No.
To be addicted.
I mean, and also, are you able to see if someone else has an addiction? Do you meet? Does it
You know,
take one to know one?
Yeah, I think so. There's telltale signs like
Yeah.
you see the man or the woman with the red face. You know, the burst blood vessels on the nose. That's a physical sign of alcohol dependence. I think in children, you can see the personalities early on, there's little seeds. But a lot of high-performing people
Yeah.
they just have an addiction which we glorify. Michael Jordan
Yeah.
could fly through the air. I mean, it leads people to do extraordinary things, but he's not a particularly healthy person. And I don't think he's a particularly happy person.
Yeah.
So I think that addiction is insidious in that there are things that you can be addicted to which will make you a high-performing person socially, and then there are a lot of people who hide addictions.
Okay.
You know, I think my work is around finding them. You know, I'm on the lookout for the CEO, the founder,
Yeah.
the guy who's got a team of 1,000, 10,000 people. I'm after them, who does, you know, because I think to myself, no one knew about me for a really long time. I hid it, and addicts are incredible hiders.
Okay.
Because it's life or death, amazing hiders, you know. But I think there are telltale signs.
Okay.
We had a lovely waitress the other day, and my wife and I have both had run-ins with, not our own, my wife and I, neither of us were heroin addicts, but we've had run-ins with heroin addicts.
Okay.
Family members, both of us have had family members, my mum and Jess's sister, and we knew that she was addicted to heroin.
Okay.
You know, we could just tell straight away. Just skinny, gaunt, the teeth.
Okay.
You know, the skin lesions and things like that. And we, you know, and again, it was a lovely girl who's just obviously. There's a couple of key things to come back to with addiction, and there's a guy called Gabor Mate. I don't know if you know Gabor Mate.
I don't. I'm
I
sorry.
will send you some stuff of his.
Yeah.
Amazing guy, and he says, never ask why the addiction, ask why the pain.
Okay.
So it's just a way of escaping the pain of existence, the pain of who we are, the past, the pain of the past, the pain of that internal critic, the pain of fear of the future, fear of the past. It's an escape from pain and if you can ask someone why the escape, what pain are you trying to escape?
Sure.
Learn to live with that pain and transmute that pain. That's ultimately how you get yourself free.
I mean, that's a really interesting point. I mean, when did you realise then that you wanted to try and find a route away from this pain, to try and get some help?
No one comes to recovery that way.
Yes. Okay.
It's not. If anybody comes into meetings and goes, I've realised I need to get some help, you know they're not ready.
Okay.
The only way you get into recovery is you hit rock bottom. So mine was, I took all these addictions through my life: drinking, stealing, porn, lying, cheating, everything, right? And I got caught for stealing money in 2012, and I had a choice, which was to lie, which I'd always done, or tell the truth. And the guy knew I'd done it, so I had to tell the truth to keep myself out of prison. I told the truth that I'd stolen all this money to pay for prostitutes and alcohol. And it was the first time I ever told anyone the truth. I then had an opportunity to pay back the money and avoid prison.
Yeah.
I kept it from everybody, and I started paying back a little bit here and there. But my whole life fell apart around it because that's the nature of addiction. I went on a bit of a spiritual journey, fasted for a long period of time, got myself sober and started to pay back the money, created a business, stopped drinking for about 5 or 6 months. Knew I had a drinking problem, but didn't know that the problem wasn't the drinking. It was deep within me, childhood trauma, anger at my mother, anger at my father, memories that haunted me, habits I'd been in since I was 8 or 9, and I hated myself and I hated everybody else. So it was really deep, and I just started to loosen it a bit. But I managed to pay back all of that money, which was the beginning of me not stealing anymore.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to go through the pain of stealing anymore.
Okay.
But I still had alcohol and porn and all these other things. And I got sober again, but then I relapsed. And when I relapsed, I went to a very dark place because I realised I was just hurting everybody.
Yeah.
The key, when you get a little bit aware, you realise that there's a part of you that starts to grow, which has a conscience. And when the part of you grows that has a conscience looks upon the part of you that's hurting everybody, it's almost unbearable, the shame and the guilt.
Yeah.
Because you realise this is not who I am, and I can't stop hurting people.
Yeah.
So I was drunk one night after my relapse, and I realised that the safest thing for everybody else would be for me to take my own life.
Yeah.
And that the pain of me dying would be much less than the pain of me living in addiction.
Okay.
And actually I could control how much pain everybody else goes through if I just eradicated my existence. I didn't know then that I wouldn't eradicate my existence, I would live on. So I tried to kill myself. I jumped into a river, I was drunk, and I failed. And I swam to the top almost out of my own control, like I just didn't, my body fought. And then I quit my job at the time. I took all the money I had and I thought, the only thing I know how to do is drink. So I'm going to kill myself through drinking. And I'm going to drink really cheap whiskey until I die.
Yeah, yeah.
So I went up to a place called Byron Bay. I drove my drove my unregistered, unlicensed car with all the money I had left. I quit my really nice job, which I was drinking at school.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle the shame of turning up and coaching children with alcohol in my system. And I lived homelessly and drank whiskey every day. I got really sick. Sort of hung out with the homeless people and just sort of hung out just drinking every day. And I was actually trying to die.
Yeah.
The only way I knew how.
Yeah.
And maybe cowardly, I could have probably just killed myself. Maybe I was a bit scared. Maybe part of me wanted to live. And then I woke up on the lawn in Byron Bay, and I woke up in the morning and it was different. Something was different. And I felt I didn't want to drink.
Okay.
For the first time in, I don't know, maybe ever.
Yeah.
And it was like something had been lifted from me. It was 2016. And I was like, okay. And I had some grandparent figures up in, not just north of Byron. I got a man and a woman called Brian and Robin. They'd helped me get sober previously before my relapse. And they knew everything about me, and they loved me. And I decided to go up there and do a long fast, because fasting had got me sober beforehand.
Yeah.
I'd done about a 10-day fast before that, and that's what helped me before.
Wow.
And I ended up doing a 30-day water fast.
No water?
No, water only.
Water only, okay.
For 30 days.
Okay. Jesus.
And that was the last time I had a drink, was on that lawn. And I saw it as a moment of grace, or maybe I'd just broken through.
Yeah.
But no one gets in long-term recovery through their own will, because that's what keeps people in addiction.
Okay.
And that's why you have to keep going. It's the hardest thing to do. A lot of family members stop their children and loved ones getting sober because they try and protect them, but actually what you need to do is let go and almost like have to almost die. But even then, 4 months later on, I knew that if I didn't deal with the underlying issues, the anger, the sadness, the loneliness, the depression, if I didn't understand myself at a deeper level, that it would only be a matter of time before I had another drink.
Yeah.
And I knew that. And then I went to my unhealed stuff with women and my mum manifested into a really traumatizing relationship where I was put in a pretty dangerous situation in Bali. And I was going to drink again. I was in Bali. I had my passport was taken.
Yeah.
My wallet was taken. And I had no money. And I'd burnt just about every bridge too because of my addiction. And I was homeless in Bali and I knew I needed to get help. So I called the cricket union, PCA, who pretty much airlifted me out. They gave me the money, sorted me out the passport, and I was put through rehab for 3 months. And those 3 months in rehab, I was actually 4 months sober when I went to rehab.
Okay.
But rehab for me was me learning what addiction was and also healing myself, because it's not the addiction, it's the pain. And I was still in pain and I was still lonely and I was still angry. And 3 months of group therapy and meetings, coupled with afterwards more fasting, psychedelics, long meditations. I've just about thrown myself into everything I can since then. I know that if I understand myself at the deepest level and if I acknowledge my feelings,
Yes.
and if I understand life properly,
Yeah.
then the last thing I'll do will be have another drink.
Yes.
But life's still life. Life doesn't really improve in recovery. Your capacity to deal with it does. And you have way more money in the bank because you don't spend it on addiction. Things just improve because you do.
Yeah.
But life still, I still get sad. I still have depressions. I still am battling anger at times. But my 12-step program has taught me about my defects. I have frameworks over dealing with my defects. I have a sponsor. I have a coach.
Yeah.
I have routines. The 12 steps gave me prayer and meditation.
Yeah.
My psychedelic journeys have given me an understanding of a higher power and what my life is here for. The 12th step, which is service-based, keeps me in my heart and keeps me aligned with something bigger than myself. I've taken responsibility, so I have a load of reasons not to drink now, and I've built a life that I don't.
Purpose.
Yeah, I have a purpose, and so, but you can see, I paint the problem,
Yeah.
and then you paint the solution, and there is nothing about addiction that is in any way simple whatsoever.
Yeah.
The problem is unbelievably complex, and just to stay sober, it requires understanding and wisdom and self-awareness and practices and prayer and purpose and love, and you need to healing and forgiveness and mercy.
You really want it.
Yeah,
You've got to really want it.
Yeah, it's life or death.
Yeah.
The gift of they call it the gift of desperation.
Okay.
And when someone now walks into the AA or the Alcoholics Anonymous rooms or the Narcotics Anonymous rooms,
Yeah.
if they haven't got the gift of desperation, all the old timers, you feel this sort of general consensus that they're not going to get it.
Wow.
And it's one of the harshest things. One of my family members is currently addicted, and he's really going down.
Okay.
He might be in prison soon, and he wants me to give him this magical cure. And I keep saying to him, go to meetings, but he won't.
Yeah.
He won't go to meetings. And so I say to him, he's like, what do I do? And I go, if you don't go to meetings, you're going to end up in prison. He won't go to meetings. So guess what? Lost his license the other day.
Okay.
He's like, what do I do now? Go to meetings.
Yeah.
But unless, there's an amazing story. I don't know if you know the story about Socrates. This is a story of addiction. I can't believe I've not told you this story. This is my favourite. Socrates was known as the wisest man.
Yeah.
He was the Oracle of Delphi said he was the wisest man on earth. And a young guy came to see Socrates in ancient Greece and said, Socrates, I want to know the secret of success. And Socrates, this young man, old man, he said, okay. It's like he's seen it before. He said, all right, come and meet me by the beach at 4 a.m. tomorrow. So you go, okay. He says, yeah. The next morning turns up, Socrates isn't there. So he goes back and finds, he says, Socrates, you weren't there. He said, sorry. Tomorrow, meet me at the beach at 4 a.m. He goes, okay, all right. So he comes again, Socrates isn't there. So he goes, what are we doing? He said, oh, sorry, I just keep forgetting. Socrates doesn't forget anything.
Yeah,
it's all a game. He goes, oh, sorry. 4 a.m. Sorry, I'm old. My mind's going. So the next day he turns up and Socrates is actually there. And this guy's like, oh, fuck, what's this? He's already So he's already half given up.
Yeah.
So Socrates says, right, you want to know the secret of success? And the guy goes, yeah, all right, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm here now. And he goes, how much do you want to know? He goes, well, yeah, I kind of want to know. He goes, okay, cool. You really want to know? And he says, yeah, I do. I mean, you were meant to be here 2 days ago. He says, but you want to know the secret? She says, yeah, go on then. You might as well show me. I mean, he's already annoyed. So Socrates says, okay, walk out with me. He starts walking him out into the ocean. Have you heard this?
No.
He's walking him out into the ocean. Now,
Yeah.
Socrates was a massive guy.
Yeah.
Believed
Okay.
in physical fitness. He was
Yeah.
strong.
Yeah.
And he walks this young guy out into the ocean. He's up to his waist. And he says, where are we going? He says, keep walking with me. It's up to his neck. And the guy goes, what are we doing? Socrates grabs this man's head and shoves him under the water
Yeah.
and holds him there. And the guy is flailing around in the water and he absolutely knows he's going to drown. Pulls him out of the water and he goes, do you want to know the secrets of success? And he says, no, look, puts him under again. The guy is just about to take his last breath. He's almost blacking out and he pulls him out. And this guy breathes this huge breath of air. And he looks at him and he says, when you want what you want as much as you wanted that breath of air, then you will have it.
Okay, wow, what a powerful story. Yeah.
Then you will have it.
Yeah.
And it's that gift of desperation.
Yes.
Like you will have what you want. And it's recovery, it's success, it's love. Like it's that desperation.
It's when the need is much greater than the want.
Yeah.
That's when change happens, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's a really powerful story that you've told, that you've shared with me, Simon. I'm grateful for
Well,
that.
I've gone, I've had to. I don't think people realise what is required to get into recovery and stay. And then it's not just that, Vipan. I see men and women in meetings. We call them dry drunks.
Yeah.
And all they are is they're living a life and they're not drinking or doing drugs anymore, but they're not happy.
Yeah.
And they're just almost like they're waiting for it's a matter of time. Or some people go 30, 40 years and they're clean and sober, but they're not happy.
Okay.
And I didn't just want to not drink. I still
You
wanted
want to live, not to survive. I think
Absolutely.
that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't want to just like go, oh, I'm 30 years sober, but I didn't fulfill my potential still. That's another side of recovery that.
So how, if for people listening, I mean, what piece of advice, say there's an addict listening today and wondering what to do. Listening to you, I'm sure, will have made a huge difference, but are there any pieces of advice that you would actually like to share or give them if they're thinking about if they're really suffering an addiction quietly? What would you say to them next?
Don't stop. Keep going.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because the only way out is through.
They're in pain.
The only way out is through.
What's that mean though? They're in pain, Simon. They can't keep going. That's just going to end in disaster.
If they're ready to stop, they'll stop. Keep going. And I've got a second part.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah.
And watch yourself while you're going, but don't try and stop because it doesn't work.
But that's the whole point. When you're in it, isn't it? Well, from listening to you,
this is it. This is why addiction is the most brutal thing on this planet.
You lose that self-awareness if you're an
You've got to be
addict.
willing. Yeah, but you've got to. If someone came to me and said, well, actually, there's two pieces of advice, I would get some help while doing that. Go get some help. Of course, it's ask for help. But the help.
Who?
AA, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
The GP maybe, but Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous are the only two things that are proven to transform people's lives. If someone's in an addiction, they need addicts. They need recovered addicts. Don't listen to anybody who hasn't been there. You need to be in a room with addicts.
Yeah.
You need to be in a room with addicts because there's something that happens in the meetings, but ultimately the advice that you'll get given is you've got to do 12 steps and the sponsor will never meet you if you don't meet them.
Yeah.
And ultimately the core of it is if you haven't had enough, go and have enough. And it's life
How
or
do you know
death.
if you haven't had enough?
Because unfortunately, you know you've had enough because every single piece of advice you're given, you follow. If there's any resistance left in you, you haven't had enough. It's brutal. It's brutal.
Wow.
It's brutal. If there's any resistance left, I speak to people now and they go, oh, do I have to? You haven't enough.
Yeah.
You haven't enough.
Yeah.
Oh, and like a good
Then
sponsor.
you need to be committed, basically. It seems to me that you're saying the path to recovery, if you can call it, this is what you call it, you need to be 1,000,000% committed.
Absolute commitment.
And any resistance means you're not ready.
You know Napoleon on the burn the boats? You know this one?
No.
Napoleon took a fleet of ships, I don't know, Gallipoli or something like that, but I don't know exactly where it is, but a fleet of ships, and they landed on the beach and to go and fight this battle. And as they landed on the beach, he said, burn the boats. Nowhere back.
Okay, yeah.
Nowhere back, burn the boats.